he betrayed her. He betrayed her daughter. And when she found him, flaunting the life he built on their destruction, she pulled the trigger, 5 times. This man wasn't just her lover, he was her daughter's too. Stay with us. You won't forget what happens next. Welcome to True Crime Story HQ. I thank you, my viewers, most especially my subscribers, for your support as we keep improving and bringing daily told and untold true crime stories update. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel. The safari wasn't supposed to be dangerous. For Michaela Braxton and her daughter, Jaliyah, it was meant to be a peaceful getaway, a chance to escape the stress of their lives back home in the United States. But amidst the untamed wilderness of South Africa, a predator far more cunning than any lion or cheetah had set his sights on them. Ezekiel "Zeke" Cole wasn't here to photograph animals, as he claimed. He wasn't an IT professional enjoying a well-earned vacation. He was a hunter, a man who thrived on deception and preyed on the unsuspecting. And Michaela and Jaliyah were perfect targets, a single mother eager for connection and her bright, trusting daughter. It started with a photo. Zeke, camera in hand, strategically placed himself where wealthy tourists often gathered. He noticed Michaela and Jaliyah laughing, their bond unmistakable, and he seized the moment. A quick snap, a charming smile, and moments later he was approaching them with the kind of confidence that disarmed even the most cautious. "I couldn't help but capture this," he said, handing Michaela a printed copy of their candid photo. "You two look so happy. It's rare to see that kind of connection." His words were carefully chosen, his tone warm and sincere. Caught off guard but flattered, Michaela accepted the photo. Jaliyah smiled, charmed by the attention from a man who seemed worldly and kind. Zeke introduced himself as an American IT professional with a passion for nature photography. He spoke of his love for travel, his admiration for strong families, and how he envied the bond they shared. They clicked instantly. Michaela, craving companionship after years of being a single mother, found herself drawn to his confidence and charm. Jaliyah, still young and impressionable, admired his stories of adventure and success. Over the next few days, Zeke effortlessly integrated himself into their vacation, joining them on safaris, meals, and late-night conversations under the stars. By the time their trip ended, Zeke had planted the seeds of trust. He exchanged contact information with Michaela, promising to stay in touch. For her, it felt like serendipity, a man who seemed perfect for her and kind to her daughter. But for Zeke, it was just another step in his carefully crafted plan. Back in the US, Zeke wasted no time solidifying his hold on Michaela. His texts and calls came regularly, filled with warmth and humor that made her feel seen and appreciated. He seemed genuinely interested in her life, asking about her work, her dreams, and even the challenges of raising Jaliyah on her own. Weeks turned into months, and Zeke's visits began. Each time he brought gifts, not just for Michaela, but for Jaliyah too. Expensive perfumes, trendy gadgets, and thoughtful surprises that made them feel special. His generosity and attentiveness quickly erased any doubts Michaela might have had. Zeke didn't just date Michaela, he embedded himself into her life. He joined them for family dinners, attended Jaliyah's school events, and even helped with household chores. To Michaela, he seemed like a dream come true, a man who not only loved her but also cared deeply for her daughter. But this was no ordinary romance. Zeke was laying the groundwork for something far more sinister. To understand why Zeke's charm worked so well, you have to understand Michaela. At just 23, Michaela found herself raising Jaliyah alone. The child's father had abandoned them, leaving Michaela to navigate the challenges of single motherhood with only her mother's support. Life wasn't easy, but Michaela was determined. She put herself through nursing school, juggling late-night shifts and long study sessions, driven by the need to provide a better life for her daughter. Over the years, Michaela built a stable career and a loving home, but her love life remained a source of pain. Failed relationships and years of rejection left her guarded, hesitant to trust. She wanted companionship, but she wasn't willing to settle for someone who wouldn't respect her or her daughter. When Zeke entered her life, he seemed to check every box. He was attentive, generous, and kind. Not just to her, but to Jaliyah as well. He made her feel valued, like she finally had a partner who understood her struggles and wanted to share her burdens. Michaela didn't see the cracks in the facade. She didn't notice how quickly Zeke had inserted himself into their lives, or how skillfully he was playing to her vulnerabilities. She was too focused on the future she thought she was building, a future where she was no longer alone. But Zeke wasn't a savior. He was a predator, and Michaela had just invited him into her home. Zeke's charm wasn't just in his words, it was in the way he made people feel. For Michaela, his suggestion to move in felt like a natural progression of their relationship. He claimed his remote IT job allowed him to work from anywhere, and he insisted he wanted to spend more time with her and Jaliyah. "Why waste time apart when I can be here with you?" he would say with a warm smile, easing any doubts she might have had. Once he moved in, Zeke didn't waste a moment solidifying his role as the ideal partner. He took over the kitchen, cooking elaborate meals that filled the house with laughter and the aroma of comfort. "You've been working so hard. Let me take care of you," he would tell Michaela as he massaged her shoulders after a long shift at the hospital. For Jaliyah, he became the kind of stepfather figure she'd never had. He took them both shopping, spoiling them with clothes, gadgets, and little luxuries that made them feel special. Every interaction seemed to reinforce the idea that Zeke was not just a partner for Michaela, but an integral part of their family. But Zeke's presence wasn't just about care and comfort. It was strategic. He spent most of his time at Michaela's place, subtly embedding himself into every corner of their lives. By doing so, he gained not only their trust, but also access to their vulnerabilities. For now, Michaela was blissfully unaware, thinking she had found the perfect man who wanted nothing more than to love her and her daughter. Behind Michaela's back, however, Zeke's attention turned to Jaliyah. What started as harmless compliments, "You're so much like your mother, smart and beautiful," soon became something darker. He began to isolate her emotionally, planting subtle seeds of doubt about Michaela. "She's so controlling, isn't she?" he whispered one evening when Michaela was out. "I mean, it's obvious she forced herself on me. I didn't want to say anything, but it was you I noticed first. You're the one I wanted, but she made it so difficult." Jaliyah, flattered and confused, didn't know how to respond. Zeke's words were carefully chosen, designed to create a wedge between her and her mother, while making her feel special. Over time, his manipulation deepened. He showered her with compliments, shared secrets, and created moments of intimacy that blurred the lines of their relationship. Jaliyah, young and impressionable, found herself drawn into a web of deceit. She knew it was wrong, but couldn't resist Zeke's influence. He made her feel seen in a way no one else ever had, and she began to believe his narrative, that this was their secret, something beautiful that couldn't be shared with the world. What Jaliyah didn't realize was that Zeke was playing a dangerous game, one that would shatter their family in ways she couldn't yet comprehend. Just as Zeke's control over their lives seemed complete, Michaela discovered she was pregnant. At 42, the news came as a shock, but it was a welcome one. She had always dreamed of expanding her family, and this felt like a second chance, a fresh start with the man she believed she could spend the rest of her life with. When she told Zeke, His reaction was lukewarm at best. He managed a smile, hugged her and said, "Wow, I just wasn't expecting this. But hey, it's good news, right?" Beneath the surface, though, Zeke's mind was racing. The pregnancy complicated his plans. He needed to act quickly before the situation spiraled out of his control. That's when he launched his final con. Sitting down with Michaela one evening, he shared an elaborate story about a groundbreaking tech project he was working on. "This tool I've developed has the potential to change the industry," he explained. "I've already got offers on the table, $37 million. Can you believe it? But I don't want to sell out to investors who'll take over everything. I need to finalize it on my own terms." He hesitated, creating the illusion of vulnerability. "The only problem is, I'm short on liquid cash. I could sell one of my buildings or shares in my investments, but it would take weeks, maybe months, and I don't want to miss this window." Michaela, eager to help the man she loved, didn't think twice. She believed him. After all, hadn't he spent lavishly on her and Jalaya? Hadn't he shown her proof of his work? His long calls, his seemingly high-powered connections, everything pointed to a man who was successful and capable. When Zeke asked for $500,000, Michaela didn't balk. She didn't even suggest he get a loan from the bank. Instead, she tapped into her savings and took out loans, raising $325,000 in a matter of days. "This is for our future," she told herself, convinced that Zeke's success would mean financial security for her family. Zeke reassured her, promising that within a month the deal would be finalized and they'd be living their dream life. "You'll never have to work another day in your life," he said, kissing her forehead. 4 days after handing over the money, Zeke vanished. At first, Michaela tried to rationalize his absence. Maybe he was tied up with work. Maybe he had an emergency. But as the hours turned into days, her calls went unanswered, her texts ignored. Panic began to set in. Desperate for answers, she went to the address Zeke had provided as his home. What she found shattered the last threads of hope she was clinging to. The landlord told her Zeke had only rented the place for 2 weeks. He didn't own it. He never had. Reality hit Michaela like a freight train. She had been scammed. The man she had trusted with her heart and her future had taken everything and disappeared without a trace. As she pieced together the extent of Zeke's deception, Michaela realized she wasn't just mourning the loss of her savings. She was mourning the loss of the life she had envisioned, the family, the stability, the happiness that Zeke had dangled in front of her like a cruel joke. But the worst was yet to come. Michaela sat in stunned silence, staring at the empty space where Zeke's suitcase had once been. The home, which had felt so warm and alive just days earlier, now seemed hollow, a painful reminder of the lies that had invaded every corner of her life. As the reality of Zeke's scam began to sink in, the weight of her loss, her trust, her savings, and her dream of a better future felt unbearable. But the worst blow was yet to come. One evening, as Michaela attempted to put on a brave face for Jaliyah, she noticed her daughter's unease. Jaliyah avoided eye contact, her usual energy replaced with quiet apprehension. Sensing something was wrong, Michaela gently pressed her. "What's going on, baby? You can tell me anything," she said, trying to sound calm despite the storm swirling inside her. Jaliyah hesitated, her voice trembling as she finally began to speak. "Mum, there's something I need to tell you." Her words faltered, but the truth spilled out before Michaela could prepare herself. Jaliyah confessed to having a secret relationship with Zeke. She explained how he had manipulated her, claiming he had been interested in her first, but was forced to be with Michaela. "I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to hurt you," Jaliyah said, tears streaming down her face. Michaela's heart shattered into a million pieces. As if the betrayal of the man she had trusted wasn't enough, the knowledge that he had preyed on her daughter was a devastating blow. But Jaliyah wasn't finished. With a deep breath, she revealed the final, gut-wrenching truth. She was pregnant with Zeke's child. For a moment, the room fell into suffocating silence. Michaela couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Her mind raced with questions. How could this have happened under her own roof? How could she have been so blind? And most painfully, how could Zeke have done this? To her daughter, to their family. Jaliyah sobbed, pleading for forgiveness, but Michaela couldn't respond. The betrayal was too deep, the pain too raw. She retreated to her room, her mind reeling as she tried to process the enormity of what had just been revealed. That night, Michaela stared at the ceiling, consumed by a mix of anger, sorrow, and a growing determination. Zeke had destroyed everything she held dear, but she wasn't going to let him get away with it. The next morning, Michaela called the police, clinging to the hope that they could track Zeke down and bring him to justice. But their response was far from reassuring. "These kinds of cases are difficult," the officer explained. "If he used a fake identity and left the state, it's like finding a needle in a haystack." Michaela's frustration boiled over. How could someone so calculating and cruel just vanish without a trace? She refused to accept that Zeke could simply disappear, leaving behind the wreckage of her life. Determined to find answers, she decided to take matters into her own hands. Through an online search, Michaela found a private investigator named Damon Lattimore, known for his relentless pursuit of difficult cases. She scraped together what little money she had left and hired him, pouring every detail of her relationship with Zeke into their first meeting. Damon listened intently, taking notes as Michaela recounted Zeke's habits, his fake stories, and the addresses and phone numbers he had provided. For 2 weeks, Damon worked tirelessly, piecing together the fragmented clues Zeke had left behind. Through a combination of social media tracking, financial forensics, and connections in law enforcement, he uncovered Zeke's true identity. Desmond Avery, a career con artist with a long history of scamming women out of their money. Damon discovered that Desmond had used multiple aliases, each carefully crafted to exploit his target's emotions and vulnerabilities. Michaela wasn't his first victim, far from it. But Damon had more than just a name. He traced Zeke, now Desmond, to Los Angeles, California, where he was living in a luxurious penthouse and frequenting high-end clubs. He was using Michaela's money to fund a lavish lifestyle, completely unbothered by the devastation he had left behind. When Damon shared this information, Michaela's emotions swung from relief at finally knowing the truth to white-hot rage. Desmond wasn't just hiding. He was thriving, using her hard-earned money to live a life of excess, while she and Jaliyah struggled to pick up the pieces. For Michaela, this wasn't just about getting her money back. It was about justice, about making Desmond face the consequences of his actions. She knew the law might not be able to touch him, but she wasn't willing to let him get away with what he had done. Her path was clear. She would go to California. She would find him, and she would make him pay. Michaela arrived in California with nothing but a suitcase and a fire burning in her chest. Every moment since Zeke's disappearance had been consumed by anger and a relentless drive for answers. She wasn't just here to find him. She was here to face him. Damon Lattimore, the private investigator, had given her a detailed rundown of Zeke's whereabouts. He frequented high-end clubs, the kind of places where he could blend in with the wealthy crowd he pretended to belong to. Michaela spent her first night outside one of these clubs, her heart pounding every time the door swung open. And then, just past midnight, she saw him. There he was, Ezekiel Zeke Cole, or rather, Desmond Avery, dressed causally, laughing loudly with a group of people as they spilled out of the club. His arm was draped casually over a young woman, a cocktail glass still in his hand. Michaela's stomach churned as she watched him flaunt the money he had stolen from her, living without a care in the world, while her life lay in ruins. This was the man who had torn apart her family, who had played her and her daughter against each other, and who had the audacity to vanish without a second thought. But tonight, he wouldn't get away. Michaela waited until the crowd thinned and Desmond stumbled toward the parking lot, clearly intoxicated. Desmond fumbled with his car keys, the luxury vehicle glinting under the fluorescent parking lot lights. As he unlocked the door, Michaela stepped forward, her voice cutting through the still night air. "Didn't think I'd find you, did you?" Desmond froze, then turned to face her. His expression shifted from surprise to irritation as he registered who she was. "Michaela," he said, slurring slightly. "You've got to be kidding me. How the hell did you find me?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her presence was enough of a statement. Desmond laughed bitterly, leaning against his car. "You've got guts. I'll give you that. But seriously, what do you think you're doing here? You're wasting your time. Your money is gone, sweetheart. You'll never see a dime of it again. So why don't you just go back to your pathetic little life and your... What did I call her? Oh yeah, your empty-brained daughter." Michaela's hands clenched into fists at her sides. The venom in his voice, the casual cruelty with which he dismissed not just her, but her daughter, made her blood boil. Desmond smirked, his arrogance only growing. "You know, waking up every day and seeing the two of you, God, it was torture. But a guy's got to do what he's got to do to survive, right? Honestly, you should be thanking me. I gave you a little excitement in your boring, sad life. Now go home, Michaela. Forget about me. I already forgot about you." The words cut deeper than any blade. In that moment, something inside Michaela snapped. She had come here for closure, to confront the man who had taken everything from her. But the disdain in his voice, the complete lack of remorse, pushed her beyond the limits of reason. Her voice trembled with rage as she stepped closer. "You destroyed my life, my family, and you don't even care, do you? You're nothing but a liar and a thief." Desmond shrugged, his smirk still in place. "Call me whatever you want. It doesn't change anything. Now, if you don't mind, I've got better things to do." As he turned to get into his car, Michaela reached into her bag and pulled out a gun. Her hands shook as she raised it, her vision blurring with tears of anger and heartbreak. Desmond froze, then slowly turned back to face her. His smirk faltered for the first time. Whoa, Michaela. What are you doing? You're not serious." But she was. "You don't get to walk away from this," she said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "You don't get to hurt people like this and just move on like nothing happened." Desmond's tone shifted, a hint of fear creeping in. "Look, let's talk about this. I'll pay you back, okay? I'll figure something out. Just put the gun down." But his words were too little, too late. The memories of his lies, his betrayal, his manipulation of Jalia, all of it consumed Michaela in that moment. And then she pulled the trigger. The first shot hit him in the chest, knocking him against the car. His eyes widened in shock as he stumbled, clutching at the wound. But Michaela didn't stop. She fired again, and again. Each shot rang out in the night, a release of all the pain and rage she had carried for months. She shot him 5 good times. When it was over, Desmond's lifeless body slumped to the ground, blood pooling beneath him. Michaela stood frozen, the gun still in her hand, her chest heaving with heavy breaths. The parking lot was silent, save for the distant hum of traffic. Her hands trembled as she let the gun fall to the ground. The weight of what she had just done began to sink in. For the first time in months, Desmond could no longer hurt her or anyone else. But the cost of her actions was yet to be reckoned with. As sirens wailed in the distance, Michaela knew her life would never be the same. The parking lot, once eerily silent, was soon flooded with flashing red and blue lights. Michaela stood motionless, her eyes fixed on Zeke's lifeless body. The gun lay discarded at her feet as the sound of sirens grew louder. She didn't resist when officers approached her, their voices firm but cautious. "Ma'am, put your hands up," one of them instructed, his hand resting on his holster. Michaela complied, her hands trembling as they were cuffed behind her back. The weight of what she had done bore down on her like a tidal wave. In her heart, she felt a fleeting sense of relief. Zeke could never hurt anyone else again, but it was quickly replaced by a crushing regret. As she was led to the police car, onlookers gathered, murmuring among themselves. By the next day, the story was everywhere. Community painted conflicting pictures. Some labeled her as a scorned woman driven to madness, while others sympathized with her plight, calling her a victim of an unforgivable betrayal. The community was split. The case became a battleground for debate. Was Michaela a vigilante seeking justice, or a criminal who had taken the law into her own hands? Discussions about morality, revenge, and systemic failures in protecting victims of manipulation. Months later, Michaela sat in the courtroom, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The trial was one of the most emotionally charged events the community had seen in years. Prosecutors argued that her actions were premeditated, pointing to the fact that she had traveled across state lines and brought a weapon with her. She had time to reflect, time to walk away, the prosecutor stated. Instead, she chose to take a life. The defense, however, painted a very different picture. They highlighted Michaela's emotional state, how Zeke's elaborate con had devastated her financially, emotionally, and psychologically. Witnesses testified to her character, describing her as a hard-working nurse, a loving mother, and someone who had always put others before herself. Jalia's testimony was one of the most compelling moments of the trial. Fighting back tears, she described the psychological toll Zeke's actions had taken on their family. "He manipulated us both," she said, her voice cracking. "He used our trust, our love, against us. My mother didn't just lose money that day, she lost her sense of self, her faith in people, and everything she had worked so hard to build." The courtroom was silent as Jalia recounted how Zeke had played them against each other, leaving scars that would take years to heal. Her words resonated deeply, swaying public opinion even further in Michaela's favor. But the law was clear. Despite the overwhelming sympathy for Michaela, the evidence of premeditation weighed heavily against her. When the verdict was read, Michaela closed her eyes, bracing herself. She was sentenced to 21 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 15. It wasn't the outcome she had hoped for, but it wasn't the harshest penalty she could have faced either. As Michaela was escorted out of the courtroom, she caught Jalia's eye. They shared a tearful glance, an unspoken promise to keep moving forward despite the pain. Back home, Jalia began rebuilding her life. She gave birth to a healthy baby boy whom she named Malachi, a name symbolizing strength and resilience. Raising her son as a single mother wasn't easy, but Jalia was determined to break the cycle of pain and create a better future for her child. In prison, Michaela reflected on the choices she had made. She had acted out of anger and despair, but she couldn't ignore the relief she felt, knowing that Zeke could never hurt anyone else again. She spent her days counseling other inmates, sharing her story as a cautionary tale. As Michaela's story comes to an end, it leaves behind powerful lessons. The power of manipulation. Zeke's actions highlight the devastating effects of emotional manipulation and the importance of recognizing red flags in relationships. Trust is precious, but it must be earned, not blindly given. The fine line between justice and revenge. Michaela's story underscores the importance of seeking justice through the proper channels. While her actions may have brought closure, they came at a heavy cost. The strength of family bonds. Despite the betrayal, Michaela and Jalia's relationship endured. Their story is a testament to the resilience of family and the power of forgiveness. The importance of seeking help. When faced with emotional or financial distress, reaching out to trusted friends, family, or professionals can make a difference. No one should have to face such challenges alone. Michaela's story is one of heartbreak and redemption, a tale of love turned sour and the lengths people will go to when pushed to the brink. It's a reminder that betrayal can destroy lives, but it can also pave the way for growth, healing, and the rebuilding of broken bonds. As viewers reflect on this story, one question lingers. What would you have done in Michaela's shoes? Could there have been another way, or was her choice inevitable in the face of such devastation? Her story reminds us all of the power of resilience and the enduring strength of the human spirit, even in the face of unimaginable pain. This story isn't just about Michaela and Zeke. It's about the fragile nature of trust and the devastating impact of betrayal. It's about how one person's manipulation can unravel the lives of others, and how the choices we make in the heat of anger and despair can leave consequences we carry forever. Michaela's journey forces us to ask difficult questions. What would you have done in her shoes? If someone had taken everything from you, your money, your trust, and your family, how far would you go to make them pay? Was Michaela's reaction justified, or did she cross a moral line she couldn't return from? These questions don't have simple answers, but they challenge us to think about how betrayal can cloud judgment and push even the most rational people to their breaking point. Michaela's story also sheds light on the emotional toll manipulation takes on its victims. It reminds us of the importance of self-worth and boundaries in relationships. Trust should never be given lightly, and love should never come at the expense of one's dignity or well-being. For anyone watching, let this serve as a reminder. Your worth isn't determined by someone else's validation. If something feels wrong, trust your instincts and don't be afraid to seek help when needed. Finally, if this story resonated with you, or if it gave you something to think about, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel. By subscribing, you'll join us on more journeys exploring the complexities of human behavior, the moral dilemmas we face, and the lessons we can learn from them. Hit that subscribe button, share this video with someone who might need to hear this story, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done?